She only said a few words. A quiet phone call, barely half a minute long, in a language most people in the room didn't even recognize. And by the next morning, Danielle Harper had lost her job. Just like that. The trigger? A soft-spoken conversation with her grandmother in Mandarin. The consequence? A complete unraveling of the life she'd carefully built. What exactly did a millionaire hear that made him decide she no longer belonged? It was just after 2:30 p.m. on a Thursday when it happened. Lunch rush was finally winding down at Juniper and Ash, one of Santa Monica's most expensive fusion restaurants. The kind of place that charged $34 for a single seared scallop and booked out 3 weeks in advance for a weeknight reservation. Inside, everything was curated, perfect. The lighting glowed golden, the music hummed like a distant memory, and the food looked like it belonged in a museum rather than a plate. The people who came here expected silence, deference, and precision. No mistakes, no disruptions, just seamless, invisible service. Danielle, in her crisp black uniform, was the embodiment of that standard. She'd worked at Juniper and Ash for 3 years, steady, calm, sharp as ever. Some of the regulars knew her by name. The staff called her the Wall because nothing got through her. No rudeness, no chaos, not even the occasional drunken guest who thought they were clever. She didn't flinch, she didn't snap, she simply delivered every time. That afternoon, she was behind the service wall, quietly wiping a spotless tray. Her phone buzzed. It was Popo, her grandmother in Taipei. That alone made Danielle's heart skip. Popo only called for 2 reasons: birthdays or emergencies. Without thinking, Danielle stepped into the narrow alcove between the wine rack and the espresso machine and answered. Her voice was soft, tender. She asked about the doctor's visit, the blood pressure medication mix-up. She promised to help fix it. It was barely 30 seconds. Then she tucked her phone away and went right back to clearing tables. She didn't raise her voice, she didn't laugh. Just a granddaughter making sure the woman who raised her was okay. What she didn't know was that someone had been watching, listening. Sitting silently in the VIP section, table 7, sipping a neat Japanese whiskey, was Dwayne Johnson, 53 years. Old legendary tech investor, and the kind of man people in LA whispered about behind doors they couldn't afford to knock on. He was a regular, a power player. He liked things a certain way, controlled, predictable, professional. He liked being served by people who never made him wait and never surprised him. And that day, something about Danielle's phone call, maybe the language, maybe her presence, maybe the way she didn't ask permission, rubbed him the wrong way. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. The next morning, Danielle's name disappeared from the shift schedule, and that was only the beginning. Danielle Harper never asked for attention. At 27, she knew exactly how to move through the world without creating ripples. She wasn't flashy. She didn't need to be. Her life was simple, structured. 5 days, a week, she arrived early to Juniper and Ash, hair tied back in a neat low puff, uniform pressed, face bare except for chapstick and maybe concealer if the bags under her eyes said she hadn't slept. She stayed late, picked up shifts, never complained, never broke rules. She moved like a ghost of efficiency, quiet and dependable. Outside of work, she lived in a rent-controlled 1-bedroom off Pico Boulevard with too many houseplants and a second-hand couch. Her laptop was filled with half-finished poems. Her weekends, mostly spent video calling Popo, her grandmother, across the Pacific. They'd talk in Mandarin about groceries, family drama, the weather in Taipei. Sometimes they'd just sit on the phone and say nothing at all. That's the kind of bond they had. Danielle had grown up between worlds. After her parents died in a car accident when she was just 7, Popo took her in, brought her to Taiwan, raised her on discipline, dumplings, and daytime soap operas. Danielle grew up fluent in 2 things, Mandarin and resilience. By the time she was 13, they returned to the States. But Mandarin never left her. It was the voice in her head when she prayed, the rhythm in her dreams, the sound of home. But in Santa Monica, that didn't matter much. People saw what they wanted to see, a young black woman in a high-end restaurant, nothing more. They made assumptions, that she was local, that she only spoke English, that she was just there for the paycheck. Danielle never corrected them. It wasn't worth the energy. Once, a customer overheard her speaking Spanish on the phone with a friend from El Salvador and smiled wide, saying, "Didn't know you spoke Spanish." Danielle had politely replied, "It's Mandarin," and the man blinked like she'd just told him she could levitate. Inside Juniper and Ash, things ran on rules, unspoken, invisible, but ironclad. Her manager, Kendra, was all teeth and tension, smiling with her mouth, not her eyes. A former hostess turned manager, she demanded perfection without praise. Danielle wasn't rewarded. She was relied on. She trained the new hires, picked up the Saturday shifts no one wanted, cleaned the espresso machine until it gleamed, and somehow stayed invisible the entire time. Her closest confidant was Milo, the half-Filipino busser who'd been there for nearly a decade. They had an unspoken bond, a shared understanding of what it meant to be quietly excellent in spaces that barely noticed your presence. "You ever feel like we were invisible? Uniforms under these uniforms?" Milo once asked. Danielle had nodded. She knew exactly what he meant. It was like being two people at once, the one they saw and the one they couldn't be bothered to learn about. She wasn't bitter. She didn't have time to be. Danielle focused on the goals she never said out loud. Save up for culinary school. Take care of Popo, right when she could. And Charles Remington? He was just another arrogant regular with a god complex and a rotation of younger women at his side. He liked control. Left 15% tips like he was granting charity. Danielle didn't care. Until Thursday. It was quiet that day. Rain had scared away most of the lunch crowd. Only 2 tables were filled, one with a couple arguing about prenups. The other, table 7, belonged to Remington. Alone. Staring out at the storm like the clouds had insulted him personally. Danielle didn't even notice him as she answered the call. She didn't think it would matter. A soft voice, a few sentences in Mandarin, tucked away by the espresso machine. But something about that moment shifted everything. And somewhere, behind that polished VIP table, something inside Remington, something quiet, rigid, and deeply afraid, twisted. It should have been just another quiet Thursday shift. Danielle was clearing table 6, wiping down a spot of condensation from a glass, when her phone buzzed once in her apron pocket. She glanced at it. Popo. That was rare. Her grandmother only called in the middle of the day when something was wrong. Danielle's heart skipped for a second. She slipped behind the service wall, between the espresso machine and the wine rack, and answered in Mandarin, her voice low, calm, and caring. The call lasted maybe 30 seconds. A mix-up at the pharmacy, Popo's blood pressure meds. Danielle reassured her grandmother in soft Mandarin. "I'll check with the doctor tonight, don't worry. Drink water, I love you." Then she hung up, slid the phone back into her pocket, and stepped out. No one noticed, at least that's what she thought, but someone had. Charles Remington, seated at table 7, had a perfect line of sight to the espresso machine. He was sipping his Japanese whiskey, stone-faced, arms crossed. Danielle hadn't even seen him there, hadn't registered his presence. But he had seen her. All of her. Her lips moving in a language he didn't recognize. His eyes didn't widen. His face didn't twitch, but there was something in the way his gaze locked onto her like a microscope, like he was analyzing a threat. Danielle returned to the floor and carried on, fluid as always, but Milo noticed something off. He was folding napkins at the bar, but his eyes flicked between Danielle and Remington. He didn't like the look on the man's face. It was cold, watching, judging. And then came the moment that broke the silence. Danielle approached table 7 with her usual calm. "Would you like another drink, Mr. Remington?" she asked. Remington didn't answer right away. He tilted his head slightly, as if seeing her for the first time in a new, uncomfortable light. Then he said flatly, "Didn't know this place hired spies." Danielle blinked, confused. "Excuse me? You speak Chinese now?" His tone had a bite. "That's what that was, right?" Sounded sneaky. She tried to steady her voice. "Yes, I was speaking to my grandmother. It was a personal call. I stepped off the floor." He scoffed, waving his hand dismissively. "Maybe next time pick a language more familiar. Makes people less uneasy." Danielle stood still, absorbing every word. Not because she was afraid, but because she was stunned. She'd followed every rule. She hadn't disrupted service. She'd been discreet, respectful. Yet here he was, throwing suspicion like daggers, simply because he didn't understand. She exhaled slowly. "I'm sorry if it disturbed you," she said, her voice measured but firm. He said nothing more. Just waved her away like she was a gnat buzzing near his glass. She turned, walked back behind the bar, not hurried, not flustered, just quietly furious. Milo looked at her from across the room, mouthing, "What was that about?" She shook her head, trying to brush it off, but the air in the restaurant had shifted. It felt denser, heavier, like a storm no one wanted to name. For the next 30 minutes, Remington didn't speak again. He typed something furiously into his phone, signed his check without a word, and walked out without even a glance in Danielle's direction. And just like that, the tension dissipated, but it left behind a crack in the floor, small, silent, spreading. Danielle went home that night thinking maybe he was just having a bad day. Maybe she'd caught him in one of those moods where rich men mistake discomfort for offense. She didn't know, but what she did know, deep in her gut, was that something wasn't right. And by morning, that gut feeling would prove true in the worst way. Danielle didn't panic at first. She showed up for work just like she always did. 10 minutes early, hair tied back, shoes polished, ready for another day behind the service wall. But when she glanced at the shift schedule clipped to the back office door, her name wasn't on it. Not under lunch, not dinner, not even the cleaning prep list. That was strange. Maybe a mistake. Maybe a last-minute swap no one told her about. She knocked on the manager's office. The door creaked open, and inside sat Kendra, the front of house. Lead, posture tight like she'd been waiting. A folder sat untouched on the desk, but Kendra's eyes betrayed her. Shifty, rehearsed, like someone about to recite a speech they didn't want to give. "Hey," Danielle said lightly, trying to sound casual. "I noticed I wasn't. Can you step in for a second?" Kendra interrupted. Danielle froze for just a moment, then walked in slowly, shutting the door behind her. She sat down across from Kendra, back straight, palms resting on her thighs. This wasn't about scheduling. She could feel it in the air, dense, suffocating. Kendra cleared her throat. "So, I wanted to have this conversation face to face because I respect you." That was the first red flag. No one says that unless something bad is coming. Danielle didn't flinch. "Okay," she said, her voice steady. Kendra opened the folder, but there was nothing inside, just empty paper. She avoided Danielle's eyes. "We've been reviewing some concerns that came up during yesterday's shift." Danielle blinked. "Concerns?" "Yes," Kendra said, her voice dropping into corporate neutrality. "A guest expressed discomfort about how you handled yourself, specifically the phone call you took during service hours." Danielle leaned in, her brow furrowing. "I was behind the service wall. It was a quick call. My grandmother there." There was no disruption. Kendra nodded as if listening, but her expression was unreadable. "It's not just about the call," she said, choosing each word carefully. "It's about how it was perceived. There were concerns about professionalism, brand image, communication." Danielle's jaw tightened. "Because I spoke Mandarin. And..." For the first time, Kendra made full eye contact, and that pause, just half a second too long, said everything. It's complicated, she whispered. Some guests don't respond well when things feel unfamiliar. Danielle's eyes narrowed. So I'm being fired because someone felt uncomfortable hearing a language they don't speak in a restaurant that serves Sichuan pork belly and Thai green curry? Kendra flinched, ever so slightly. It's not personal. You've been a model employee, but we have to maintain a certain standard of guest experience. Danielle's chest burned, not from rage, but from the kind of quiet betrayal that doesn't scream. It sinks, cold and low. This came from Charles, didn't it? Kendra hesitated, then nodded. He's a major investor. You know how it is. Danielle exhaled slowly through her nose. You could have defended me. You could have said I did nothing wrong. I have a job too, Kendra said, her voice barely audible. I don't make the big decisions. Danielle stood up quietly. You don't need to pretend you respect me, she said. Just hand me the paperwork. Kendra reached into the drawer, pulled out a final paycheck and a typed separation. Letter with the phrase, failure to meet brand expectations, printed in soft grey font. Danielle didn't read it. She folded it in half, tucked it into her pocket, and walked out. Outside, Milo stood by the lockers. One look at Danielle's face, and he knew. They really did it? He asked. Danielle nodded. Because of a 30-second phone call. I guess Mandarin's a threat now, Milo muttered, trying to keep the anger out of his voice. They didn't even try to hide it. Danielle didn't answer. She was too busy trying to stop her hands from shaking. People think racism is always loud, she finally said, like it comes in slurs or hoods. But most of the time it's quiet, polite, dressed in phrases like image and comfort, and it tells you exactly where they think you belong. She took off her apron for the last time, folded it neatly, and placed it on the bench. Milo looked at her hesitant. You sure you don't want to fight it? Danielle gave a tired smile. I just need a day to think. Then she stepped into the California sun that suddenly felt too bright, because the world hadn't changed, but something in her had. That night, Danielle sat in her apartment, lights dim, dinner cold on the stove. She had called Popo, reassured her gently that everything was fine, that she was just taking a break. But inside, something felt ripped loose, a quiet ache unraveling. Beneath her calm, she tried not to cry, tried not to let the injustice settle into her bones. It wasn't just about losing the job. It was the silence, the quiet way they folded her out of the picture. No shouting, no formal warning, just erased. But Milo, he wasn't ready to let it go. That same night, while Danielle sat alone staring at the ceiling, Milo opened Facebook. He didn't mention names, didn't call out Juniper and Ash directly, but he posted something raw in a private group for service workers in LA. A co-worker of mine got fired yesterday. Not for being late, not for messing up, not for breaking any rules. She took a 30-second phone call from her grandmother in Mandarin. That's it. Guest didn't like it. Now she's out. In a restaurant that serves Asian fusion food. Think about that. He clicked post and shut his laptop, not expecting much. But by morning, the ripple had become a wave. Screenshots of his message had been reposted across public forums, shared on Twitter, spread through local Reddit threads. Comments poured in. Hundreds, then thousands. This is disgusting. Sounds like they're scared of anything they don't control. My cousin got fired for speaking Arabic at work. Same story. And then the guessing began. People started naming restaurants. Someone identified Juniper and Ash. Someone else confirmed it. A Yelp review appeared, then another. By lunchtime, the restaurant's page was flooded. Photos of the menu surfaced online. Review bombs hit every platform. And in the middle of the chaos, someone dug up a clip of Dwayne Johnson. Yes, that Dwayne Johnson, speaking at a conference. A powerful shot of him on stage. The caption read, "This, the guy who gets women fired for speaking Chinese to their grandma." Danielle's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. DMs flooded in. Some were kind, some were intense. Journalists wanted quotes. Advocacy groups asked to amplify her story. Total strangers offered support, advice, solidarity. Even a few conspiracy theories made her laugh out loud for the first time in days. But she didn't respond to any of them. Not yet, because even though the world was shouting now, Danielle needed space to breathe. Meanwhile, Juniper and Ash was falling apart at the seams. Staff walked out mid-shift. A hostess quit in front of guests. One chef threw an entire tray of duck confit into the trash and left without a word. Kendra was spiraling, trying to hold it all together as the restaurant's name burned on every corner of the internet. Milo called Danielle that night, his voice low and steady. "They're in full damage control mode," he said. "Management's trying to make us sign NDAs." Danielle raised an eyebrow. "NDAs? What, they think I'm going to leak their secret sauce? They think we'll talk? It's too late for that, though. This thing's afire now." She paused, staring at the blank wall of her living room. "I didn't ask for any of this." "I know, but you didn't do anything wrong either." Danielle was quiet for a long time. "You think I should say, do something? I think you should do what feels right," Milo replied. "But just know, people are listening now." The next morning, Danielle sat at her kitchen table, fingers hovering over the keyboard. She didn't type a rant, didn't beg for sympathy. She just told the truth. "My name is Danielle. I was fired last week from a restaurant in Santa Monica after a guest complained about me speaking Mandarin to my grandmother on the phone. I wasn't late. I wasn't rude. I wasn't unprofessional. I was just speaking to someone I love in a language that's part of me. That's all it took to lose my job. If you've ever been made to feel small for who you are, how you speak, or where you come from, I see you." She hit post. Within 12 hours, it had over 40,000 likes. She was invited onto podcasts. Local news picked it up. A national Asian American advocacy group reshared her message. So did several black media outlets. And that overlap, race, language, power, sparked a conversation bigger than Danielle ever expected. Danielle didn't expect her post to change the world. She wasn't trying to go viral. But somehow, her quiet truth had become a microphone passed from hand to hand, heart to heart. And people weren't just listening, they were responding. They were feeling seen. For the first time in days, Danielle didn't feel alone. The comments weren't just support, they were stories, dozens, then hundreds. One woman from Oakland shared that she hadn't spoken Spanish at work in over 5 years because it made her co-workers uncomfortable. A teenager in Fresno said he played Danielle's post for his entire class during a project on cultural identity. A man in Chicago talked about being written up for answering a phone call in Korean while working the front desk of a luxury hotel. The details were different, but the message was the same. This happens more than people think. Danielle read every word. Some made her laugh, some made her cry. But most of them made her feel powerful. Not loud or angry, but rooted, like she finally understood the weight of what she carried. Like her story wasn't an outlier, but part of something larger, something layered in language, pride, and survival. Popo called again that evening. "I saw the news," she said in Mandarin, voice trembling through the speaker. "Are you okay?" Danielle smiled. "I'm okay, Popo, just tired, but okay." "You always had a strong voice," her grandmother said. "Even when you were little." Danielle's eyes burned. "It took losing my job to remember it." But the story wasn't done. Not yet. Not until Danielle stood face to face with the people who had tried to erase her voice to protect their comfort. 3 days after her post, the email arrived. The subject line read, "Request for conversation." It came from J. Roth, legal, counsel for Juniper and Ash. The message was short, professional, cold. We're aware of the recent attention regarding your departure. We'd like to discuss a resolution and ensure both sides are heard. Please let us know if you are open to a brief meeting." Danielle didn't respond right away. She read the message 3 times, then shut her laptop and went for a walk. The ocean was only 20 minutes away, and the waves helped her think. She knew what this was. They didn't want a conversation. They wanted containment. They wanted her to be quiet. But something had shifted inside Danielle. She wasn't scared anymore. She wasn't hiding. The next day, she emailed back. She would attend the meeting. It was held in a bland office near Westwood. Fluorescent lights, too much air conditioning, the kind of place where everything smelled like printer ink and awkward silence. Jay Roth wore a grey suit and a neutral smile. Kendra was there too, seated nervously beside him. Her posture said apology, but her eyes said avoidance. Danielle wore jeans and a plain white tee. No earrings, no makeup, no performance, just her voice. Roth started with a rehearsed tone. "Let me be clear. We want to offer a formal apology and a financial settlement in exchange for closure." Danielle tilted her head. "Closure for who?" Roth's smile faltered. "We understand emotions are high, but the restaurant's reputation is being damaged. Our client has received threats." Danielle leaned forward. "You're worried about your reputation? I lost my job, my peace of mind. All over a phone call." Kendra stared down at her folded hands. Danielle didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. "I followed the rules. I trained your staff. I never caused problems. But one man felt uncomfortable not understanding what I said, and suddenly I was a liability." Roth shifted in his seat. "We're offering 3-month severance and a written apology." Danielle let the silence stretch. Then calm and firm, she said, "Make the apology public, no NDA. Admit I was fired because a guest didn't like hearing Mandarin. That's my condition." Kendra looked up, voice shaking. "We'll post a statement," she said. "You didn't do anything wrong. I should have defended you." "I was scared." Danielle didn't blink. "I lost everything. You don't get to be scared now." That afternoon, Juniper and Ash issued a public statement across all platforms. It read, "We acknowledge that the termination of Danielle Harper was handled in a way that did not reflect our values of inclusion. Speaking another language, especially one tied to family and culture, should never be cause for dismissal. We sincerely apologize to Danielle and the broader community. We are actively reviewing our policies and staff training." The comment section exploded. Some people praised the statement. Others called it performative. But Danielle didn't care. The truth was out. Her voice was no longer buried, and it was just the beginning. A week later, Danielle sat with Milo on a bench overlooking the ocean. The air smelled like salt and calm. Waves rolled in slow and steady, like a quiet applause for what she had endured. Milo handed her a cold soda, condensation slipping down the can. "You did it," he said. Danielle shrugged. "I didn't do it to win." "No," Milo said. "You did it so they'd finally see." Danielle gave a small smile. It wasn't triumphant. It was tired. The kind of smile that comes after a storm, when everything is still wet and heavy, but the sky's finally clear. "People always talk about finding your voice," she said, eyes still on the waves. "Like it's something hidden you have to dig for." Milo nodded. "They made you feel like it was too loud, but it never was," Danielle whispered. "It was never too loud." She didn't return to the restaurant industry, not because she couldn't, but because she no longer wanted to shrink herself to fit into spaces that didn't deserve her. A month after the incident, she used part of her settlement money to enroll in a part-time culinary program at a local community college. It wasn't some fancy, Instagrammable cooking school in Paris, just stainless steel tables, sharp knives, and instructors who didn't care where you came from, only that you showed up ready to learn. She started a blog too, At first, it was just a way to organize recipes. Popo's dumplings, beef noodle soup, scallion pancakes, simple food, made with memory. But it quickly became more than that. She started writing about identity, about what it felt like to be both black and multilingual, about speaking Mandarin at home and English outside, about being too much of one thing and not enough of another, and how exhausting it was to always feel like a puzzle people were trying to solve. The blog took off. Messages came in from everywhere. Some were long emails from women who had hidden parts of themselves to survive corporate culture. Others were DMs from students writing papers on code switching and cultural bias. One woman from Seattle wrote, "I stopped speaking Spanish at work years ago. Your story made me realize I've been shrinking myself for people who never deserved." A kid from Houston, messaged, "I played your video in my speech class. We talked about how language is more than communication, it's home." Even strangers in other countries wrote to her, some in broken English, some in their native tongues, but all saying the same thing. "Thank you. I feel less alone." Danielle never asked to be a symbol. She didn't set out to be the face of anything. But life, as it often does, handed her a microphone when she least expected it. And this time she didn't put it down. She still talks to Popo every few days. They still speak in Mandarin. Only now, Danielle doesn't hide in service, corners or whisper into the phone. She speaks on speaker wherever she is, grocery store, sidewalk, classroom. If someone is uncomfortable, that's not her weight to carry anymore. Here's the truth she learned. Silence doesn't protect you. It only makes you easier to erase. Danielle didn't burn anything down. She didn't curse anyone out or storm. Through boardrooms demanding justice, all she did was speak, clearly, honestly, with heart. And for some people, that was the loudest, most threatening thing she could have done. But Danielle didn't speak to fight. She spoke to exist. And that was more than enough. If you've ever been told to lower your voice, to smile instead of speak, to make yourself smaller just to keep a job or keep the peace, Danielle Harper's story is for you. She didn't storm out. She didn't scream. She didn't burn the place down. She simply answered a phone call in a language tied to her blood, to her roots, and for that she was erased. But here's the part they didn't expect. Her silence didn't end the story. It started one. When the restaurant fired her for being unfamiliar, they underestimated something powerful, the resonance of truth. Danielle's voice, calm, clear, unwavering, cut through the noise. It crossed timelines, screens, hearts, not because she shouted, but because she stood tall in a world that kept asking her to kneel, and now her voice lives in every person who's ever been told their background is a burden. It lives in kitchens, classrooms, sidewalks, and screens, reminding us all that language isn't a threat. It's a lifeline. It's culture. It's survival. It's love. Dwayne Johnson played the man who started the fire, but Danielle, she became the flame. Her words lit 1,000 others. Her courage told people, "You are not alone." That matters more than any viral moment. So now it's your turn. If this story hit you somewhere real, if it reminded you of something you felt but never said, don't keep it quiet. Share it. Speak about it. Comment. Tag someone who needs to hear it. And if you've got a story of your own, tell it. Loud, unapologetic, in whatever language your heart was born in. Because the truth spreads faster when we stop pretending we're alone. Like, share, subscribe, and never, ever be afraid to speak. Danielle didn't shout. She didn't riot. She didn't break a single rule. She simply spoke to someone she loved in the language her heart was raised on, and that was enough to lose her job. But she turned that silence into power. She reminded us that language is not a threat, it's identity, and no one should ever be punished for being fully, unapologetically themselves. If this story moved you, made you feel seen, or opened your eyes, Don't let it stop here. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and leave a comment about the moment you found your voice. Most of all, subscribe for more real stories that challenge comfort, confront bias, and celebrate truth. Because the world needs more voices like Danielle's. And maybe, just maybe, yours too.